guys, and welcome back to another episode of Life Uncut. I'm Brittany.
I'm Laura.
And she's got the giggles. We love to see it. You're in a good mood today, Laura.
I'm in a... Fuck you.
I'm serious. You're in a great mood. I love it. The vibe's high. There's giggles.
I've just been sitting here saying what a terrible mood I'm in. It's Monday, but I'm good. I will get into a better mood.
I will survive.
I will survive. Hey.
I got into a fight yesterday. I want to tell you about it quickly because I don't like confrontation.
You say this, Britt, but you are the most confrontational, non-confrontational person that I know. And I say this because this is what Britt does. And I say this with all the love of someone who's known you for as long as I've known you. As someone who feels like I could be related to you. You drop confrontation and then you go, I don't like confrontation. And you walk out of the room.
Yeah, because I don't like it.
So you'll throw it. You'll be like,
yeah.
She punches someone and then she goes,
punch
and then she'll uppercut them and then say, I don't like confrontation and walk out. So that person who wants to return serve goes, fuck's sake.
I also didn't really get into a huge fight. It was just
fuck's sake.
Okay, I had a conversation. You got me. I had a conversation. With confrontation, I don't ever go looking for it. This is what I want to say.
It finds me.
But wherever I am, it finds me. No, I don't go looking for it. But if I feel that I'm passionate about something or something's unfair or someone's being bullied or whatever, then of course I'm going to go and say something or stand up for someone.
You're a vigilante.
Anyway, there was bullying happening yesterday. Okay.
At the dog
beach,
park.
At the dog beach. And the person being bullied was Delilah. Delilah was having a great time. There were probably 30 to 40 dogs. So I was on the rocks watching, kids running around, dogs everywhere. If you go to this beach, you know it's a dog beach. So you know you're going there with dogs, right? And the beach isn't that big. It's quite small. You've probably seen it on my Instagram stories if you follow me. I go there all the time. So there are these two little kids in about 4 or 5 meters in front of me, and they've been digging holes in the water. They're probably 5 and 4. I don't know. They're old enough to be running around by themselves, right? And Delilah goes running up to them, next to them, and these kids are on their hands and knees and pushing the sand underneath them like a dog. And so Delilah goes up next to them and she also starts to do that like a dog. Oh, she's a dog. She's acting very dog-like. And then these kids 3 to 4 times punched her, pushed her, kicked her because they were don't dig my hole. And I was like, oi! And I called out to them. But firstly, I was like, oi, don't touch my dog. Yeah, but secondly, if you do that to the wrong dog, that dog is going to turn around and bite you on the face. If you treat an animal like that. And Delilah was sort of it's so funny. She looked upset. She was like,
Mom, the kids won't play with me.
But they were so aggressive, these little kids. So I went over there and first of all stopped Delilah. But then I said, I looked around for the parents. No one was around. So I bent down and I was like, hey guys, I was really nice. I was like, firstly, you can't treat an animal like that. Secondly,
I will fuck you.
I'm taking your bucket and spade, bitch. I was like, if you don't know a dog and you punch it, it could turn around and bite you on the face. So you can't do that. And I was being really nice. Then I hear this, oi. And I'm like, oh God. I look up and the dad walks over and he's like, is there a problem? I was like, well, sort of. I was actually just trying to tell your kids who punched my dog, but if they punch another dog, there's a high chance it's going to turn around and bite them on the face. And you know what he said?
What?
Well, she did ruin their hole.
Well, she did ruin their hole.
The debt that they were digging. And I was like, are you fucking serious? You can see where this fight's gone. I'm like, she's digging a hole. She's not ruining a hole and you're at a dog beach. Shouldn't you be more worried that your kid is abusing an animal and also animals that they don't know?
Parents.
Anyway, we had this big brawl and then I had to leave the beach.
Why did you leave the beach?
Because she kept digging. She kept going back and digging in the kids' holes. And I was like, fuck it, I'll just leave. Anyway, that was my confrontation. But how ridiculous, right? And I don't even know if I'm looking for validation here. I'm looking for something. So if you want to give it to me.
Do you feel you're
I was
validated?
right?
You're right.
Because
yes,
you're the parent. You would never let your kids treat an animal like that.
No, I mean, I would never, ever. But my kids never would. My kids would never push or hit or anything. That's part of how your children have been raised to view animals, right? That's obviously, it's trickled down from the dad. If the dad didn't see that as a problem, then that's why the kids didn't view it as a problem in the first place. So that's parenting. But also it's just sometimes...
So that's called parenting.
That's parenting. That's bad parenting. But I mean, sometimes you have instances where you'll be at the beach and a dog will just fucking run across your towels, across your shit. And you're there with your kids and you think, okay, and I have a dog and I'm like, dude, put your dog on a lead. If your dog is that lacking lacking in spatial awareness that it's going to do that, that's really annoying. And in those instances, I'm kind of like, I will kick off with the dog owner, or someone's dog comes and runs and like steals food off your picnic blanket or something. Like those instances are so annoying.
That you'd kick the dog.
Never. But what I'm saying is that you'd never ever raise your child in a way where they would think that pushing a dog or hurting a dog, no matter what that dog is doing, is the answer. So you please feel validated in the fact that you fought. And I can't believe you got shamed into leaving the beach.
I did. I was having a great time. It was sunset. It was beautiful. Anyway.
How dare they?
Okay.
Did you kick the kid?
Obviously. No. No, I love children.
Just nodded again. That was so unconvincing. Britt oscillates between talking about frozen embryos and crying on this podcast and then saying,
because I see little shits like that.
I don't want kids. She's like,
I see shits like that and I'm like, oh.
I know.
What if mine turned out like that?
I feel the same. But once again, I put it down to bad parenting.
I was like, what else can you genetically test that embryo for? Can you confirm or not if they will be a legend? Because I want good kids only.
Genetically test this child and make sure, one, that it sleeps through the night and isn't an asshole.
I did just want to quickly say I read every single message that everybody wrote to me because I was
so nice.
I was very flooded and overwhelmed with responses about me talking about my embryo and fertility journey, and I couldn't get back to everybody because they were like overwhelming. I don't think I've ever had so many responses. And the thing that makes me happy about that is there's that many more of you going through that maybe now realize that you are so far from being the only ones going through that. Like there is such a big community, unfortunately, of women experiencing that same thing. And I realized even more than I realized. Does that make sense?
100%.
Like once the messages were coming in, I was like, I knew that this community of people were big, but I didn't realize that it was so extreme. And people in the public eye, actually, quite a few people in the public eye in Australia were messaging me about their experiences that I didn't even know about.
Well, that's the thing, right? And for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, on Tuesday's episode last week, Britt spoke about freezing embryos, and it has been like an ongoing thing that we've talked about over the last couple of years has been, Britt, you freezing your eggs, but something you hadn't shared was that actually you and Ben froze embryos as well, and why the last egg freezing round was such a big emotional thing for you to go through. Honestly, the response to that was incredible. Like, you guys are amazing. And in the way that you say it, Britt, like, I totally understand, because I felt the same when I talked about miscarriage on this podcast. Like, you don't ever want there to be other people who go through it, but there's something really healing about the fact that you're not alone, but also this community that raises up and puts their hand up and says, like, I'm also part of that group that no one ever wants to talk about. And it makes you and everybody else who's doing it feel like, okay, well, I'm not broken. And there's, other people who are experiencing the same thing that I'm experiencing. It's just a really powerful thing as a woman, I think, as well, to know that you're not defected because your fertility doesn't work in a way that you, as you were growing up, thought, oh, it's going to be fucking easy, because sometimes it's just not.
And also just validating that feeling. And I wrote this in my caption when I put it on my reel, that feeling of I shouldn't be allowed to feel terrible and upset because some women go through it 10 times more than I do. And it doesn't matter how many times you go through something, you're allowed to feel that. And I just wanted to say that to anyone, that in case it is their first time and they felt like I did, where, I did one embryo round and got nothing and I was devastated, but I felt like I wasn't allowed to be, because I know so many other women's journeys are so much harder.
I totally understand what you're saying, Britt, because there's always people. And I don't know why people want to compete on sadness. They want to compete on trauma. There's people who tell you, well, you didn't have it as bad as they had it, or how dare you talk about this or be a spokesperson for this when, they've experienced X, Y, Z. I understand it comes from their own personal loss, their own personal trauma, their own feelings of not being able to come to a place of resolution. I mean, there's things that happen in life that you're never going to come to a place of resolution with. But sometimes I see these types of comments, especially on social media, and you think, why are we competing to be the saddest or to be the most unhappy, when really this is just a conversation about how fertility, especially, and isolated to fertility, can affect many people in many different ways. And it's just one singular voice that adds to the overall conversation around it.
Yeah, and it's all okay.
All right, well, this is a bit of a pivot from there, but I wanted to tell you something that's very exciting that's happening in my life tomorrow. I can't say we because Matt's really not included in this at all. He's still in Vegas.
I just don't know how this is going to end.
I'm taking the girls to go and get a kitten.
I know.
And Matt is not thrilled, But he will be thrilled. He will fall in love with this kitten. His love will grow for the kitten.
So what I can say is I am on board with this. You know I support this.
So cute.
But I support it to the next level. So I get a message the other day from Laura and it's a video and there's 2 kittens in there. And she's like, oh my God.
They all need homes.
She's like, I need to pick one. I was like, fuck that. Take them both. I was like, they're so cute. How do you pick? And what you should tell Matt is that they've been together since birth. They were found together.
They're bonded.
And they can't be separated.
Bonded kittens.
I think that's what you're going to have to do and take them home. How are you supposed to choose one?
And bring home a whole litter.
Take them all. Okay, take the whole shelter.
So this actually came around like really serendipitously, and like I kind of love this. So you guys, if you've been following along for my sort of personal story long enough, you would know I have a 3-legged dog. His name's Buster. He is an angel. He's an angel sent from the heavens. He would never dig a hole and get punched by a kid because he can't dig. He's got 1 leg.
He can still do a lot with that leg though.
Oh yeah, he does heaps.
With that leg, I've come over. He's whipping up a roast, Sunday roast. He does a lot with that leg.
He has no idea that he's missing a leg. Like he's honestly, of all of the boys in the world, he's the goodest boy. He's so well behaved. He's such an angel dog. And he was a rescue. So I never intended on I never, ever, ever thought I was going to get a dog. And what happened this one day is off the back of a shitty breakup, like my big shitty breakup I talk about all the time, I was walking home this one day with a bottle of wine, and my housemate at the time told me that my neighbor was also going through a breakup, and I barely knew her. Like I'd met her once just in passing. And I was walking home with this bottle of wine, and I walked down the street, and out the front of her house, she was sitting and she had this dog. And I kind of looked at my wine, and then I looked at her and I was like, hey, want to drink this with me? And she invited me in. We drank a bottle of wine, turned into a couple of bottles of wine. And Buster she was fostering Buster through this rescue organization. And she wasn't like a particularly exercisey type person. Like she would take him for the absolute bare minimum of walks that he needed to go on. But he was ripping her apartment apart because he was a 1-year-old dog and he was just tired. Like he was just had too much energy, and he was ripping a couch apart. And I was in my hashtag fitness era.
I love that you're like, he is the best dog. So he tore her apart.
He was shredding her apartment. But he was only 1. He was a puppy. He had so much energy and just wasn't getting enough exercise. And so I got a key to her house and I would take him for walks every day. And after a couple of months of doing that, he still hadn't been homed. And I had so deeply fallen in love with him. And this family came this one day to see him. They were going to adopt him.
And you were like, no!
Well, I was walking him that morning and I was just crying the whole time that I was walking him around Centennial Park. And I was bawling my eyes out because I was like, oh, it makes me cry now. I was like, oh my God,
because you almost could have
someone's gonna adopt him today. And they came, they saw him, they loved him, but they decided at the wire that they thought maybe he would have too many vet bills because of having 3 legs. And so I took that opportunity and I adopted him, and it just all came it just was like the perfect time of my life.
Happened how it was supposed to happen.
Totally. And the big thing about Busty, and this is I know it sounds so lame, but I genuinely mean this. People, when you get a rescue animal, always kind of say to you like, oh, you're so good. You're such a hero. Oh, you rescued an animal. Especially him because he's got 3 legs and it's so obvious that he's been through some big traumas in life. People are always like, oh, he's such a hero. You're such a good person. But he so saved me. Like I was in such a sad and pathetic state in life. I was so lonely and he pulled me out of that. So I always say like he rescued me just as much as I rescued him. Oh, I cried.
Yeah, Delilah's from a farm, but she also rescued me as much as...
They just do. And anyway, so the reason why we're doing it is like it all aligned perfectly. This month is pet adoption month. If you've been thinking about getting a pet, go look at rescues. And so I've been wanting to get a cat for ages. Matt and I have been fighting about it, but he went to Vegas and so I get a cat, and that seems perfectly fair.
I also love that Laura's like, Matt always says that I get my way. And I'm like, yeah, because he goes overseas and you do everything you want to do so that when he comes back, he doesn't have a choice.
He's come home and the entire house is full of plants and cats.
Yeah.
It fucking is. So anyway, tomorrow we get to take the girls to go see them. I'm so excited.
Very cute.
And I'm going to have a little kitten and I'm going to be a lady and a cat again.
You should change your Instagram to the lady and a cat lady.
Lady and a cat.
Lady and a cat lady.
Lady and a cat and a dog and 2 kids. Oh, Jesus Christ, that was weird. Matt's not a child.
I want to talk to you guys about something that resonated with me. It's going viral online at the moment. It's all over the news. And when I saw it, I was like, I feel you. I hear you. I see you.
Because I am a cradle snatcher too.
Because I cradle snatcher too.
Because I'm a cougar.
Kristin Cavallari. Now, you might know her from the old school TV show, reality show, Laguna Beach. Do you remember Laguna Beach, Laura?
I can't say I've ever watched it, no. But I mean, I've seen articles about these people, but it means nothing to me.
A very big American show. It was on MTV, which is like you had to be uber rich when you're a kid to have like Foxtel and MTV and like because they were the paid.
Right.
I still had a TV where you had to click the channels like.
You're like 50. You actually are. You're closet 50. You just had a facelift.
I have not had a facelift.
Sometimes you tell stories and I'm like, bitch, you're actually a 50-year-old.
It's not 50, Laura. It's called Paul. Okay. Sorry, we didn't have a flat screen plasma. Thanks for making me say it.
Neither did we.
Well, that doesn't make me 50. Just because you don't have Foxtel doesn't make you 50.
Foxtel, a TV station that like literally you need to connect up to the roof.
Laura, if I tell you, no, there were 4 kids. We had to take it in turns standing next to the TV with the rabbit ears to get the service.
All right.
Anyway, Kristin Cavallari, she's got 3 kids. She's 37. She's recently, in the last couple of years, divorced. And now she's come back out and she's dating. She's gone public with a relationship, which we love, beautiful, but she's been slammed for it. Now, the reason she's been slammed for it is because her new love is 24 years old. And people have just gone for her at every limb, gone for her neck, taken her out at the legs. Like they are coming for her because they're calling her gross, a cradle snatcher. All the comments on Instagram, she just put this beautiful post up, right? Her and her boyfriend, and she just goes, he makes me so happy. It's just a beautiful photo of them. They're both genetically blessed humans. He doesn't look 24. You know, he looks like a big football player, right? Like he's not a footballer, but he looks like that. He's big, he's muscly, he's very American, chiseled, handsome. Okay.
All right, Britt, settle down. Britt's gyrating in a chair. He's because he's actually Britt's preferred age.
It's like he's my ex. His name is Mark Estes. I might be pronouncing that wrong.
Just look, Brittany's following who she's following on Instagram, and he'll pop up.
Yeah.
So
I slid into the DMs, but apparently he was taken. But she's been slammed, and some of the comments are like, "Oh, are you taking your other kid out? You know, if you got 4 children, or you're picking your kid up from school." And I just am not about the narrative around this because I don't understand. I genuinely don't understand why it's a problem. Now, the age gap is 13 years. Obviously, she's older, 13 years. She's got the 3 kids. She's got the family. A lot of people don't understand why a younger guy would want to date an older woman with kids. But why is that up to us to narrate their story? Like, why is it up to us to say what 24-year-old wants to date an older woman with kids? Obviously, Mark does because he is.
It's crazy that if this was the other way around, no one would blink an eye. I think
Hello,
that's the
DiCaprio,
biggest,
looking at you.
I mean, people are blinking an eye at him now because it's kind of predatory. But I mean, like ultimately a 13-year age gap in the reverse, especially in the world of celebrities, it doesn't even get airtime, a guy dating younger women. And I think it's because this still goes so deeply against societal norms where we've been told that younger men are not interested in older women, that we've been told that as you age, you're undateable, especially a mother of 3 children. Oh my God, shock horror.
But have you seen her? She's a babe.
She's beautiful. But even not, like, why does it have to just be based on attractiveness? Like, even in this instance, because I looked at the photo, I saw the photo that she posted of the 2 of them. They look the same age. They don't look like there's this massive age gap. And the comments are things like, oh, like, is that your grandma? Like, is that your grandson? Is that your kid? It's just it's so demeaning and so belittling. And I think it's very unfair. It also is the reason why so many women won't date younger men for fear of the way that people will think.
Not
I know,
me.
Britt, you haven't had that issue.
I'm not scared.
No, but you have been. You even said, so for example, you were dating Jordan, your ex. He was 7 years younger.
Yeah, he was 7 years. I was about to say my junior, but that sounds gross. So he was 7 years younger, but he was, and I think this is important, he was 25. And I say important because the day that he turned 26, I was like, thank God.
But that's what I mean. You said that just before we were getting onto the record and we were talking through the story. You were like, oh my God, I was so thrilled when he turned 26 because that just didn't sound as bad as 25.
26 hits different.
26 hits
Say
different.
It. 26. 25.
Oh, he's so mature.
He's 26. It's basically 27.
But that's what I mean. Even you, I mean, he's the same person regardless of whether it was 3 days after his birthday or 3 weeks beforehand. But it's the age that we kind of become fixated on. And I understand when there is an imbalance of power. I understand when you're dating down someone who's so young that they don't have the life skills, they don't have agency or choice, or, you know, maybe it's because this person who's the older person is wealthy, successful, just, you know, wields a lot more power in multiple facets of life. That's when it's totally problematic. And he's looking at you, Leonardo DiCaprio, when you're 49 years old and you're dating girls who are in their early 20s, when you're one of the most powerful actors in the world, and you're dating models who want to get into the industry. That is a power dynamic that a lot of people now have an issue with. But in this instance, a woman dating someone who's 13 years younger, like, fucking let the girl live. And I read this really interesting quote, which I kind of loved, because I know that so many of us would rule out dating younger men. And even myself, I think I would. I mean, I'm not really on the market to date anymore, but if I was.
And you've also said if you ever split up with Matt, you would never date again.
I know. I just don't think I could be bothered, but maybe I would. Anyway, I would have always said I wouldn't date younger men, but I found this quote really interesting. The pool is already so small to find the right person for you. Why are we making it even smaller? Men don't. And when you think about that, men will date up, they'll date down, they'll date whatever. You know,
left, right.
It's so open for them. The pool is so wide that they can date whoever they want to, yet women are still constricted around, okay, only date people your age or up to X amount of years older.
Look, it does come with a few boundaries. This is what I want to say, like a few caveats. I love to say age is just a number and age gaps don't matter, but I don't truly believe that. Age gaps matter depending on the age. So 13 is different when you're 18, right? Like when you're just in your adult years, dating someone 13 years older is more questionable for a multitude of reasons. A, obviously there's going to be a power imbalance, but B, you're still finding out who you are and you're at different stages of life. Chances are if you're 18, you're not ready to be settling down and having kids, whereas if you're in your early to mid 30s, you're in a different life phase. But at the end of the day, that's the number one thing. If this guy, Mark, is 24 years old, but he's super mature, he's in the same place as Kristen is, they don't notice the difference in their relationship, that's what matters. And I remember people saying that about Jordan and myself. I was like, he's so mature in his life because he's always been traveling around the world by himself. He grew up very quickly. He's very disciplined. I didn't notice a difference. But if I was dating somebody else at the exact same age that was just a party boy that didn't want to do anything, I wouldn't be able to date him because we're in different places. So it's more about where you are. If these two people, there's no power imbalance. He's living his own life. He's doing well. He's successful. They're two adults that have made a conscious decision to date each other. She's not preying on him.
But like, even so, like my other feeling about that, when you say, okay, it comes down to maturity and life stages and everything else, that's the same for any relationship, regardless of age gaps. Like, I mean, totally. In terms of you being like, well, you know, he might be still a party boy and he might be this and he might be that. He might be all those things. He might be a party boy and they'll figure that out for themselves in their relationship. That still doesn't constitute an imbalance of power, right? It just constitutes being at different stages to someone that you've decided to be in a relationship with. That shit happens whether you're the same age or not. I've dated men who are older than me who have been in a different phase of life. There are so many more social stigmas around older women dating younger men. Usually when we talk about big age gaps and it's an older man with a younger woman, we talk about power imbalance. But when we talk about an older woman with a younger man, we talk about how weird it is that he could possibly find her attractive. And that, I think, is so unbelievably superficial, and it really adds to this narrative that as women become older, we become less important, we become obsolete, we become invisible, we become less attractive.
So we put a poll up on Instagram because we know how we feel, but we always love to know if that is the general consensus or not.
Let's canvass the nation.
Yeah, and the statistics were actually surprising because only 52% of you said you were completely okay and had no problem with an age gap if, of course, there was no power imbalance in there. So just over half, and basically the other half, 48% of you, said you did have a problem if it was like 10 years or older. So like 10 to 20 years, we put that up like as a group. So 48 versus 52. I thought more people would be okay with the age gap.
But I think it also comes down to the age of the person who's answering that question, right? So as I've gotten older, I have cared about age gaps less.
Yeah.
Whereas when I was 18, I wouldn't have dated someone who was 35, for example. Like I just would, like that to me sounded crazy. Whereas now I'm like, that age gap to me doesn't sound so big. So I think if you're in your teens, obviously an age gap is more profound. If you're in your 20s, a big age gap is more profound. If you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and you're dating someone who's 15 years older than you, like if you're 40 and you're dating a guy who's 55, it doesn't feel that big or that crazy. It doesn't even sound that crazy to say. But if you are 20 and you're dating a guy who's 35, that feels like a bigger age gap. And I think in just the way that it sounds. So I definitely don't think that you can clear cut this idea of age gaps and just say, oh, they don't matter, they're irrelevant. Yes, I think they do matter under some circumstances, but sometimes I think we get hung up too much on what society thinks we should do because of what's quote unquote right or normal, not actually what is at the very basis at the best interest of the people who are in that relationship.
Also, there are plenty of women that you probably don't even realize in the public eye are in like age gap relationships where they're dating down in age. Courtney Cox for one, and her husband, Johnny McDade. There's 12 years difference with them. Remember Kim Kardashian when she dated Pete Davidson? Spoiler, 13 years difference.
Would not have guessed that. Pete Davidson looks a lot older than what he is.
He does.
And she
he needs
has
some
been paralyzed in time.
Under the eyes, Pete. I think that's what ages him because he always looks tired.
Yeah. I like it though.
I love him.
He looks haggard.
Everyone loves him. Apparently,
Looks sexy and haggard.
He must be so good in bed. He's got to be. He has to be.
He's funny.
I reckon he's funny
hot
in bed.
Chicks would
I reckon he makes them come and they giggle come.
and laugh at the same time.
They laugh
Okay.
orgasm.
Olivia Wilde and Harry Styles, 10 years. I mean, that one was pretty well documented on,
yeah.
and that was kind of a bit of a weird one.
Yeah.
And one of the ones that was very controversial at the time and was all over the news was Ashton Kutcher and Demi Moore, 15 years. I mean, it didn't work out well for them.
Yeah, but well, it did. They were together for a long time and then they moved on. It's
I
not
mean,
like
he cheated on her and like things really spiraled out of control.
yes,
anyway.
but it's not like they dated for. I mean, they were together a very long time, and normal people that are the same age are together that long and cheat on each other. So like that had nothing to do with the age. I don't know. I stand that.
Well, something I wanted to talk about, which has been doing the rounds online in the last couple of days. So Bradley Cooper, he used to be my hall pass, but also, I mean, kind of tenuous linkage. He also has a big age gap now because he's dating Gigi Hadid.
Okay, that's not what we're here
That
to
is
talk
not
about.
what we're talking
We've
about.
done the age gaps.
We can unpack. Okay. So basically what he's been in the news about is he was on the Dak Shepherd, it's the Dak Shepherd Armchair Expert podcast. Great podcast.
Not as good as Life Uncut, but great.
And he was talking about his experience of being a dad. Now, everyone is up in arms because he's talking about his daughter, Leah, and what he had to say was that in the first year of her birth and the first year of her being in the world, that he didn't have this unwavering sort of feeling of, you know, they talk about this feeling that's going to come over you as a parent, that you're going to be so overcome with love. And he talks about how that was so lacking for him in the first few months of her birth. The way he described it was this. He said, the first 8 months, I don't even know if I really loved the kid. That was my experience. I was fascinated by it and I loved taking care of it, which is weird that he keeps calling his child an it, but he does. And then he goes on to say, but would I die if someone came in with a gun?
Well, that's because he said like all his friends were talking about when their kids were born. They were like, oh, it's this
I would die
instant
for
love. I would die for it. He was like, I mean, I didn't feel that. I don't know if I would die for it. And people have just come with their pitchforks for him.
Well, it's not even that they've come with their pitchforks. A lot of people are sort of saying like, this is an internal monologue. Why would you need to say this out loud? A lot of people, and I think anytime that someone describes their parenting experience as less than the ideal parenting experience, where there's this sacrificial lamb to the joy of parenting, people clutch their pearls at it, right? And so what I took from his interview was that he was saying he didn't have the overwhelming, strong hormonal bond that a lot of people have, but that he grew and fell in love with his daughter over the years. And what he says is that now being a father has made him a better person. He talks about how if he hadn't become a father, he probably could be dead by now, in terms of how fast and furiously he was living his life and how she completely anchored him. That's the description he uses about his experience of parenthood. But people get so up in arms by this idea that maybe somebody doesn't unwaveringly love their child the second that they come into the earth. And I think it's so important, this conversation, because we've spoken about things like postnatal depression in terms of like a mother's experience. And I do think that mothers and questioning this undying love that we're supposed to feel the minute that we give birth to our children. We've definitely had it from a female perspective, but I think a lot of men and a lot of dads don't have that instantaneous love, and then they have to grapple with that feeling of maybe they're an inadequate dad, maybe they're not doing a good enough job, or maybe they've missed some sort of dadding gene that they're supposed to have if they're going to be a great father.
I think it's great that Bradley Cooper's talking about this, because from all accounts, the people that I've spoken to in my life, the males, and I had this exact conversation literally in the last 3 weeks with a guy, said exactly the same thing, because they physiologically, they aren't having those hormonal changes. So they haven't gone through that 9 months of feeling different things in their bodies. They're seeing their partner do it, but nothing is happening to them. I think it's far more common than not for a man to see this child and say, oh, okay, like it's mine, I'm going to love it, like look how cute it is. But they're not having that innate flood, like a tsunami of feelings rushing through their body. They haven't had time to bond, to get to know, to have the same sort of experience that the woman has had.
Well, I mean, some dads do. It's not like this is a blanket rule. Like some people do. Some mums do, some mums don't. A really good friend of mine who has 2 children now, he was talking about when he had his first little boy. And I was pregnant with Marley. We went and had breakfast at the time. And he said when his wife gave birth, he was at the hospital and everything was as they kind of thought it should be. There was nothing traumatic about the birth. It was quite a joyful, quote unquote, experience. And he said he just looked at this baby and then he walked downstairs and the hospital doors opened and he walked outside and he started to cry. And he thought to himself, like, we've ruined our relationship. He was like, what have we done? He had this almost like foreboding feeling of like, oh my God.
That's too late.
Well, yeah, it was like, that wasn't what I expected it to be. He was expecting the flood of love to come and the flood of love didn't come. And then he was like, holy shit, what is wrong with me? And like I said, I think we've spoken about women who experience that, the delayed onset of a feeling of love, but we don't really speak about dads who talk about that delayed onset. And so by not talking about it and by not giving it airtime, all it does is that dads who do feel like it takes them a while to bond with their children, they feel like they're shit dads and they feel like they're not adequate at what they're doing. And, you know, even if you speak to Matt will talk about Lola and he will say, like, he loves his girls. I hate that we have to preface these conversations with that because you fear that someone might interpret it the wrong way. But it took him time to connect with Lola in the way that he'd already connected with Marley. And the reason for that is it's sometimes really hard to connect with a baby that does nothing but scream at you.
Of course.
Like scream at you all day long, especially when you already have a 2-year-old in the world who's telling you they love you and giving you all this adoration and love. The two things don't just instantaneously match up.
No, and I've had friends say to me, of course I love this child, but they are not adding one thing to my life right
Not
now.
yet.
Like not one positive thing, because no, they love it, but they love it because it's there. They'll look after it, but they're like, is it bringing me joy right now? No, because Laura, they're going through hours. I mean, you've experienced this, like 12 hours straight of screaming, and when they're not screaming, they're just shitting. So people are like, yes, people are like, actually like, well, yeah, I love it, but is it adding to my life right now? No, hopefully it does in a year.
Well, I love the conversation that surrounds parenting, and I've heard it had in a couple of different circles, but this idea of falling in love with your children as you get to know your children more and more. And I think as much as I feel very fortunate that I had the flood of love with Marley and also with Lola, but I can definitely say that I have fallen in love with my children the more that their personalities have come through and the more that they've turned from little blobs into little individual people with their own quirks and personalities. And I think that that's what he's describing in this. And I kind of hate how the internet instantly gets on the defense and says, well, how's Leah going to feel when she's old enough to be able to see that you've said these things about her, that you didn't love her? And I would hope that him being able to have an honest conversation like this and talk about how much having a child has fundamentally changed him and how he now sees that there's something in the world that's bigger and more important to him, that's a reflection of the relationship that he has with his daughter. And when she's old enough to comprehend that when she was a tiny baby that he didn't connect with her right away, she'll also be old enough to comprehend how much he does care for her now. I just think sometimes there's such an adverse reaction to speaking honestly about parenting, and it shouldn't be the case.
We interestingly asked you guys your response because we always do that. We want to know what our own audience thinks. And 40% of you said that either you and or your partner had trouble connecting with your child when they were born. 40%, that is a huge amount, which is just
fucking
telling
wild.
us that it's happening and people aren't talking about it. So I think hats off to Bradley Cooper. On top of that, it's all anyone's talking about, right, is that he said this, but no one's talking about the rest of the conversation, which is how much he loves his daughter and would do anything for his daughter. And the whole idea is how much it changes. But we're not talking about that because that's not what media does. What media does is grab a headline, the worst part, to make it look like the worst thing anyone could possibly say, and then they just drop that and run.
Well, this is exactly what he went on to say. After he said, would I die for her? Question mark. Like, I don't know at that time when she was, younger than 8 months. But then he goes on to say, and then all of a sudden it's like no question. And I think so many parents experience this feeling of like almost like one day where you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I could not imagine my life without you. But when you very first came, I was a little bit worried about what I did there for a second. And I don't think that there should be shame or stigma around talking about that. And I certainly don't think that we should view parents who experience this as though they're doing something wrong by their children by talking about that experience. It doesn't invalidate you as a parent, doesn't make you a bad parent. Obviously, if that's something that is prolonged, you need to go and seek help about it. It could be postnatal depression, et cetera, et cetera. But it is a really real thing. And I think a lot of people, like we said, feel like they're doing a bad job because they don't have the textbook, beautiful fairy tale experience around birth where they feel the flood of love.
And we can't constantly be saying men need to open up, men need to realize that it's okay to be vulnerable, men need to be able to express their feelings. Then said man opens up, is vulnerable, expresses feelings, and then we want to tear him down. Like, you can't have it both ways. And maybe it's a different conversation if he didn't finish that sentence with, but then all of a sudden it changes and you would do anything for them. If that wasn't the end of that sentence, then maybe we could be talking about it. If he 6 years later still had these feelings and issues, different conversation.
Well, then that's just a deadbeat dad.
Well, no, it's just a dad that could be really struggling still too, and mentally could be in a different place, but that's not what the conversation is. The conversation is that real, raw honesty of, hey, when this little crying blob came out, I didn't understand it. It didn't take me long, and then I got it, and now I realize that obsession. Like, why are we dragging these people for this?
And I think the only last thing I want to say on this is that for a lot of women, you have 9 months to mentally prepare because the growing, the body changes, the hormone changes, the nesting, all of that stuff happens to you. And as women, we often are more invested in that process than what our partners are. I'm not saying that that's the right thing, but often as women who are the birthing mothers, we will read the books, we will do the research, we take on that role. And a lot of times, once again, I'm not saying it's the right thing, but a lot of dads can kind of disassociate themselves from it. They're like, well, she's reading the book, so I don't necessarily have to read the books. And so they're not as invested or feeling the process as it's happening. Yeah, sure, they might have assembled a few cots and moved a few bits of furniture, but their life hasn't changed. Whereas a pregnant woman's life changes from the time that they get pregnant. They have to stop drinking.
Their body's changing.
And they're preparing. Whereas his life doesn't change until that baby's on the outside. And sometimes that means that person has to emotionally catch up, and they have to mentally and maturity-wise actually catch up to the place where you've had 9 months to reach beforehand. All right, it is time for Accidentally Unfiltered, your most embarrassing story. And this one, I mean, it's innocent, but also it's cute. Okay, this just happened to me. I am in year 11 at a boarding house, for context. Which the thing that Britt and I found most surprising about this is that we have listeners who are in year 11.
I fucking love that. But then I'm also like, I mean, I guess it's their sexual awakening maybe.
Like having the big sisters that they never had.
Yeah.
Talking about their labias.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Okay. This just happened to me. I'm in year 11 at a boarding house. I have this pajama top on with a really low and wide dip at the back, but I accidentally put it on back to front. So my boobs were pretty much fully exposed. But I was like, whatever. My roommate was out and it was just me in my room, so I didn't really think about it. I went to sleep and then I got woken up in the middle of the night by some year 9s who were outside making TikToks, literally outside my room.
Youth.
The fucking youth these days. So I opened the door and I stood square in the doorway and I asked them to be quiet, and they just all stared at me with their mouths open. And then I shut the door and they started laughing hysterically, being like, oh my fucking God, what did we just see? I was so confused because I'd just woken up. And then I looked down and realized that both of my boobs were out.
The thing that jumps out here is I was like, oh, I know you're young because you're wearing cute, beautiful, low-rise pajamas. Like, you should see what I go to
little
bed in.
cute backless pajamas. I go to bed with my tits out.
Same. And like the oldest Bridget Jones undies you've ever seen.
To be fair, I would stand at the doorway and yell at some Leondis if they were making TikToks outside though. I don't care if they see my saggy boobs.
Yeah, but you're nearly 40. She's only 2 years older. She's in year 11. She's probably making her own. She's probably made a TikTok about her titties being out.
Perfect.
If you guys have embarrassing stories, accidentally unfiltered, please send them in to Instagram, Life Uncut Podcast. Just put accidentally unfiltered whilst we're here. Send your Ask Uncuts in as well. Any questions to Life Uncut Podcast on the Instagram.
All right. It is time for Suck and Sweet. Brittany, what is
Don't
your
you throw to me while you figure yours
suck?
out. I don't know my suck yet. Lee,
What's
give me
your
a minute.
suck? My suck. I know my suck.
Go. Okay. Laura, what's your suck today?
My suck is that Matt is in Vegas. He's been in Vegas now for over a week. And I have to listen to him being like, it's so hard being away from you and the kids. And then the social media really is not correlating with the, it's so hard to be away from you and the kids, because I'm seeing him having a fucking great time. A great time. He's over there for the football. He looks like he's absolutely loving life. And then he's like, Laura, social media is not real life. And I'm like, shut up, Matthew. It is real life. You're in Vegas.
Does this mean you get owed now like a girls' holiday anywhere child free? So can we all go somewhere?
Because he was at work. So it's not really.
Oh,
but it's,
bitch, please.
I know.
His work's Vegas. So we're going to go do podcast work then in the Bahamas. Sold. Sorry, Matt. We got a podcast someone in the Bahamas.
I mean, yes.
Fair.
That's exactly what it means. Absolutely.
Okay.
So that was my suck for the week. My sweet for the week is that my mother-in-law moved in, which is so cute.
Oh, that's
So
great.
Ellie has finally officially moved in. She's only here with us for a couple of weeks though, and then she goes overseas to France she's like learning. How cute is this? She's like retired. She's 74. 72, she'll kill me for that. And she's just moved in with us, and now she's going to go and do like 2 months in France learning how to speak French, doing like a French intensive course.
Good on
What
her.
a fucking life.
She's such a boss.
That's what I want to do when I retire. Just travel to Europe and learn a language.
I hope she comes back with the man.
I don't, because she's living in my front room. I
Yeah,
really
but you
don't
want her to be happy and in love. Like
Yeah, but I don't want her bringing over boyfriends. Like, fuck, there's already enough bodies in my house.
Well, no, but maybe she'll move it out and actually have a love of her life later in life. I think that's beautiful. I'm rooting for you, Ellie.
Ellie is not rooting for anyone. She
needs to root for herself.
She would laugh so hard at that, because until meeting Ellie, I would have said that if you go through a divorce or whatever, at some point in life, you'll want to date again, right? Like you'll want to meet someone, because like everyone wants companionship when they're older. She is the most beautiful example of someone who has prioritized female friendships in her life. She has no interest in dating whatsoever. And she's so closed off to the idea of finding someone, but she's so happy. I love that, because I think it challenges what most people think is that you need to be, if you're alone, you're going to be sad. And she's alone and she's stoked. She's like, why would I want to invite someone into my life that's going to mess this shit up? So anyway,
she needs to go for a younger man. Okay.
I don't want to hear my mother-in-law fucking in the front room. I just don't.
Think of the content.
This is true.
My suck this week, weirdly, I just didn't really have a standout suck.
Someone punched your dog.
Yeah, but I already said that, and you always put the rule that like you can't have the same suck that was in it. What I will say is I am finding it very hard to balance having any sort of social life and maintaining contact with Ben. And now that sounds ridiculous, but with our time difference, he wakes up and goes to work in the morning right at like dinner time, so right at 7 p.m., which means we only speak for that 15 minutes that he goes to work in the morning. So if I do anything with my life, like if I meet a friend for a drink or dinner or literally anything, I don't speak to him that day, because I'm not going to say to my friend, excuse me, while I go speak to my boyfriend for 20 minutes. And then he's completely out of action. They're not even allowed their phone at work. Like their training is so intense that they get fined if they're on their phone, which is crazy. So I barely spoke to him this week because I had a lot of things on at nighttime. And it sounds so dumb that like if I go to dinner, I don't speak to my boyfriend for an entire day, but it's true. So I feel like I haven't spoken to him at all in a week. Oh. Hope you're well, Ben, because I know he listens to this. Listens to this. And my sweet of the week, I had a really nice weekend at the beach, and this sounds so simple, but after 2 months in the UK winter, I feel like this was probably one of the first whole weekends where I was like, the sun was out, it was shining. I didn't have a lot of plans in the day, so I just went to the beach with Delilah. It was like the summer I felt like I missed out on. So that was it. It's such a simple, beautiful.
But that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
It's the little sucks and the little sweets of the week.
And then a little bitch punch my dog.
Okay. Anyway,
that's
that's
it.
enough from us.
Like, comment, subscribe.
And also you can join us on Instagram, which is Life Uncut Podcast. That you can find us also on the discussion group, Life Uncut discussion group. We're everywhere, guys. Now we're TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and
That's it. Don't forget, tell your mum, tell your dad, tell your dog, tell your friends, and share the love because
we love love.